Kaden crashes into a dim alley, bloodied and battered. Weak and desperate, he scans his surroundings for a place to conceal himself. Time is running out, and getting caught seems inevitable if he continues to flee. His eyes fixate on an old chubby cat, and a stroke of genius strikes him. In an instant, the scene transforms, revealing a different character, Jiwoo. Jiwoo excitedly heads to the store for himself, but ends up buying cat food as usual. He justifies it as it will make his Kates happy. While waiting to cross the street, he notices a little boy in danger, about to be hit by a car. Jiwoo quickly rushes to save him, bewildering onlookers with his speed. After ensuring the boy's safety, Jiwoo reflects on his hidden powers and fears exposing them. Returning home, Jiwoo apologizes to his cats for being late and begins to feed them. But there's something peculiar about their behavior. The cats seem to be communicating with him, asking him to follow them. They lead Jiwoo to a battered and bloodied cat. As the Kaden wakes up, he realizes he's transformed himself into a cat. And just as Jiwoo enters the room, their dynamic dance begins. Jiwoo's genuine concern intertwines with Kaden's annoyance. He stubbornly resists Jiwoo's attempts to nurse him back to health with cat food. Kaden is annoyed and deeply disturbed by the fact that this boy is trying to feed the great Kaden cat food. Kaden involuntarily breaks character and speaks as Jiwoo picks him up, sending Jiwoo into a state of shock and disbelief. Kaden silences him with a threat to claw his skull open, and Jiwoo complies. As Kaden demands Jiwoo's name, the shocking realization hits him. The cat was talking. Seizing the opportunity to establish dominance, Kaden demands that Jiwoo bring him a chair, which Jiwoo dutifully fetches. Just as Kaden is about to threaten Jiwoo into never uttering a word of this to anyone, his eyes meet with a chubby old cat nearby. It can't be. The shocking reality of his transformation dawns upon Kaden, overwhelming him to the point of unconsciousness. Kaden wakes up, thoroughly annoyed, to find himself transformed into, of all things, a chubby cat. Jiwoo, unable to contain his curiosity, bombards Kaden with questions, addressing him as Mr. Kaden, sir. Grudgingly, Kaden reveals that he's a human who temporarily turned himself into a cat. Remaining secretive, Kaden shuts down any further inquiries from Jiwoo. As an uncomfortable silence settles, Kaden's stomach growls, followed by Jiwoo's urges to feed him. Kaden stubbornly refuses to eat cat food, demanding human food instead. Jiwoo reminds him of his current cat status, cautioning that human food might not be the wisest choice. Eventually, Jiwoo gives up and heads out to feed the other cats in the yard. With a bit of contemplation, Kaden reluctantly decides to listen to Jiwoo's advice and nibbles on the cat food, embarrassed by how quickly he devours it. Naturally, he blames his appetite on his stupid cat body to save face. Kaden decides to lay low until he regains his strength. However, Jiwoo has other plans and announces a trip to the animal hospital to pick up some cat food. Reluctantly, Kaden agrees to come go with Jiwoo to keep an eye on him, so he doesn't rat Kaden out, settling snugly in Jiwoo's jacket for the ride. Little does he know, Jiwoo's true intention is to ensure Kaden's well-being after finding him covered in blood. At the animal hospital, Kaden discovers Jiwoo's sneaky motive as the vet performs a thorough checkup. The diagnosis is simply a recommendation for a diet. Jiwoo's concern touches Kaden, even if he doesn't like to admit it. On the way back, Kaden's cat instincts kick in as he spots what he deems a monster cat. The creature emerges from a dark alley, its red eyes gleaming, and its tiger-like stripes too big to be a regular cat. Shocked and confused, Jiwoo hesitates before taking off, initiating an intense game of tag. The monster cat lunges toward Kaden and even manages to swipe at Jiwoo, narrowly missing him. Trapped and frantically searching for a weapon, Jiwoo pulls out the only thing in his pocket, an unexpected cat charmer. It serves as the perfect distraction, but unfortunately for Kaden, it works a little too well. Kaden has a vivid flashback where he is offered the opportunity to rule the world alongside a man, with chance of Kaden the Great. However, the scene shifts to a comical moment of Kaden playing with a cat charmer. The monster cat takes advantage of Kaden's distraction and swipes the toy away. Cornered once again, Jiwoo realizes that the cat seems strangely familiar. The monster cat lunges towards them, but Jiwoo dodges the attack, grabs Kaden, and they make a run for safety. Finally finding a moment of peace, Jiwoo, being the hero that he is, decides to confront the monster cat to protect others from harm. Despite Kaden's annoyance, he admires Jiwoo's courage and offers to temporarily lend him his powers. With a touch to Jiwoo's forehead, Caden transfers a surge of power and electricity through his body. A riveting battle takes place as Jiwoo faces the monster cat, but Caden soon realizes that Caden isn't using the powers he lent him. Caden discovers Jiwoo has powers of his own. In the showdown, Jiwoo uses Caden's abilities to temporarily incapacitate the monster cat. A man lands on the tower, frustrated that he's unable to track the sample. He realizes he must use his powers to locate it, noting that this sample is more powerful than the others. Meanwhile, Jiwoo tends to the monster cat, worried that he may have been too harsh. Caden reassures Jiwoo that the cat will be fine. Jiwoo timidly asks Caden to keep his super speed a secret, explaining that he's hidden his powers his entire life due to people thinking of him as a monster. Caden is surprised that Jiwoo doesn't know he's an awakened one and reveals that there are others like them with abnormal abilities and that Caden is an awakened one too. They both realize they haven't eaten amidst the chaos and sit down for a meal. Their dinner is abruptly interrupted when Caden senses a sinister energy and the monster cat wakes up, causing havoc and escaping. Jiwoo decides to confront the cat again to protect others and help the cat itself. Reluctantly, Caden agrees to accompany him, as he wants to learn more about this sinister energy. While searching for the cat, Jiwoo and Caden discuss Jiwoo's powers. Caden speculates that there may be more to Jiwoo's abilities than just super speed. They eventually locate the monster cat and find the same man who was looking for his sample kneeling beside it. It turns out that the monster cat was his escape experimental subject. The man realizes that the cat has awakened, making it more aggressive and stronger. He effortlessly defends himself against the cat's attacks with a flick of the wrist, cruelly throwing it against the wall multiple times to test its strength. Caden realizes that the man is a powerful awakened one and warns Jiwoo not to reveal themselves yet. However, Jiwoo decides to save the cat, disregarding Caden's protests. In the process, Jiwoo reveals himself as an awakened one to the man and rescues the cat before the man can retaliate. Flabbergasted by Jiwoo's reveal, the man soon flees, fearing the arrival of other trackers. Caden and Jiwoo make an escape, but Caden remains angry with Jiwoo's recklessness. Jiwoo, on the other hand, is happy to have finally made good use of his powers and is excited about rescuing the cat. However, Caden is concerned that Jiwoo may have compromised his identity and could now be in danger. Jiwoo and Caden tended to the cat, with Caden assuming he would be fine since he was an awakened cat. However, Caden was secretly terrified that Jiwoo had put himself in grave danger. Forced awakening experiments were strictly forbidden, and the man who had lost evidence of his crime would surely come looking for it, even if it meant taking Jiwoo's life. Caden chose not to disclose this information to Jiwoo, as he had just discovered his own awakened nature, but he did warn him to be cautious now that he was exposed. Jiwoo apologized for his actions, but confessed that he couldn't bear to leave the poor cat at the mercy of the cruel man. While they conversed, Jiwoo suddenly realized that he had spent the entire night dealing with chaos and had forgotten about school. In a rush, he left enough food for Caden and hurried off to school. The yard cats entered the house and began feasting on Caden's food. Initially angered by the intrusion, Caden reconsidered and allowed them to indulge since they were the reason Jiwoo had been able to rescue him in the first place. Caden soon stumbled upon cans of cat food that had been stored away. With his claws, he opened them, treating himself and the yard cats to a feast. Confused, Jiwoo returned home to find all the cat food gone. Jiwoo relives his lonely childhood memories in a dream. Moving frequently and feeling isolated, he relied on a cat for comfort when he had no friends. His teacher grew concerned about his behavior and attempted to wake him up. Once Jiwoo realized that class had ended, he hastily left, eager to return home. Along the way, he accidentally bumped into a new student named Wooin. Apologizing for the collision, Jiwoo received no response as Wooin quickly received a phone call, urgently instructing him to return to the lab due to potential trackers in the area. Back home, the monster cat finally regained consciousness, finding himself surrounded by the yard cats. Just as the monster cat was about to attack them, Caden intervened, knocking him out again. Jiwoo grew concerned as he noticed that the monster cat had yet to awaken. Caden reassured him, explaining that the cat had indeed woken up, and then questioned why Jiwoo had so much cat food when he did not own any cats. Jiwoo confided in Caden, revealing that the first friend he ever made was a stray cat who mysteriously disappeared. Since then, Jiwoo had developed a special fondness and care for stray cats. Wooen arrives at the lab and finds the man from the alley, who is furious and referred to as the Professor. The Professor's latest experiment has failed, resulting in the death of the subject. He orders Wooen to acquire more animals for his experiments, warning of trouble with the trackers if they don't comply. Wooen informs the Professor that they have already used animals from nearby areas, and the local population has begun reporting their disappearances. This reply infuriates the Professor, leading him to strike Wooen and demand that they acquire the animals by any means necessary. Meanwhile, Caden attempts to revive his powers but struggles to gather enough energy. He has already used a significant portion of his powers and lent some to Jiwoo as well. Caden finds himself thinking about the previous incidents and feeling protective of Jiwoo. Jiwoo becomes more concerned about his safety, unaware of what the Professor is truly capable of. Caden decides to assist Jiwoo in controlling his powers and tells Jiwoo that it may take years or even decades to gain true control. However, it turns out that Jiwoo just might prove Caden wrong. Jiwoo shows impressive progress in mastering his powers, though Caden remains quiet about his admiration. Jiwoo prepares to leave for school. Caden is puzzled by Jiwoo's ability to quickly enhance his powers, but arrogantly attributes it to his own teaching skills. Throughout the class, Jiwoo once again dozes off, only stirring when his teacher scolds him. The teacher informs the students about Wooen's absence and requests that they contact him. On his way back home, Jiwoo stumbles upon Wooen being harassed by 3 schoolboys who are rummaging through his bag. Surprisingly, the bag is full of cat treats. Deciding to intervene, Jiwoo becomes the target of the bullies instead. Employing his powers, he skillfully evades their attacks, prompting them to retreat due to drawing attention. Curious about the cat treats and Wooen's absence, Jiwoo questions him, but Wooen remains silent. Excited, Jiwoo rushes home only to discover that Caden has vanished without a word. Jiwoo apologizes to Caden for overreacting about his disappearance, realizing that Caden was simply using the toilet. Caden awkwardly dismisses Jiwoo's apology. They soon notice that the monster cat is waking up. The cat starts causing havoc again, but Caden subdues it. Once the cat calms down, Jiwoo insists on taking it to the vet for a checkup, tempting Caden with cat treats to join them. While on their way to the vet, Wooen happens to pass by and recognizes Jiwoo with the cat. He realizes that the cat in Jiwoo's arms is the awakened cat from his lab. The doctor confirms that the cat is currently in good health and, once again, recommends that Caden be put on a diet. Jiwoo notices an unusually high number of animals in critical condition. Upon inquiry, they discover that someone has been leaving animals along with money for their treatment in front of the hospital. Both Jiwoo and Caden find this suspicious. Wooen returns to the lab and confronts the professor about the trackers he encountered when he lost the awakened cat. The professor recalls the incident and menacingly states that if he were to find the boy, he would kill him. Jiwoo is thrilled to see Wooen finally attending school and tries to get his attention, but Wooen ignores him. He's wary of Jiwoo being a potential tracker, just like the professor encountered. On his way back, Jiwoo stops to feed a stray cat and Wooen follows him, seizing the opportunity to inquire about the awakened cat. Wooen shares his recent loss of a cat and suggests that the one Jiwoo carried to the vet the previous night might belong to him. Jiwoo, innocent and trusting, asks Wooen to wait and rushes off to retrieve the cat. This act strikes Wooen as absurd. If Jiwoo were a tracker, why would he willingly bring the cat back to him? Jiwoo quickly grabs the cat and returns to Wooen. However, the cat suddenly awakens and causes chaos. It recognizes Wooen from the lab and refuses to go back with him. Jiwoo is taken aback by the cat's reaction and begins to suspect if Wooen is truly the rightful owner of this cat. When Jiwoo refuses to give the cat to Wooen, Wooen uses force. Wooen strikes Jiwoo in the neck, which should knock him out for a couple of hours. But just as he's about to leave with the cat, Jiwoo calls out to him. Jiwoo stands up and questions Wooen about his true intentions for wanting the cat. However, Wooen is confused about how Jiwoo is even able to stand after the strike. He advises Jiwoo to let go of the cat for his own safety. However, Jiwoo's curiosity gets the better of him as he speculates if Wooen is working with the awakened one, who is after the cat. This confirms Wooen's suspicions that Jiwoo is indeed the tracker mentioned by the professor. Without hesitation, Wooen attacks Jiwoo before he can react, but Jiwoo retaliates, showcasing his super speed. Ji-woo attempts to get hold of the cat multiple times, but Woo-in, with his trained skills, skillfully avoids Ji-woo's every attempt. Woo-in starts to doubt if Ji-woo is truly a tracker since his use of powers appears clumsy and unrefined, unlike the highly trained professionals that the trackers are. Upon further inquiry, Woo-in confirms that Ji-woo doesn't work for anyone. He's simply caught up in this mess. Woo-in once again advises Ji-woo to forget about the cat, himself, and the professor. However, being the determined and perhaps foolish boy that he is, Ji-woo follows Woo-in to the lab, where he is greeted by the professor. Caden grows concerned as Ji-woo has been gone for a long time, so he goes out to find him. The professor struggles to remember where he has seen Ji-woo before, but once it clicks, he ruthlessly strikes Ji-woo multiple times, leaving him unable to get up. Witnessing the professor's actions through the security camera, Woo-in rushes to Ji-woo's defense. Woo-in convinces the professor to leave, assuring him that he can handle Ji-woo himself. Before leaving, the professor breaks Ji-woo's leg to prevent him from using his powers. Seeing the professor beating up Ji-woo, Woo-in can't hold back any longer and blurts out that Ji-woo is not a tracker. Enraged, the professor realizes that Woo-in had lied to him about taking the cat from the tracker. In a fit of rage, the professor attacks Woo-in, intending to kill Ji-woo. But just as the professor is about to strike, Woo-in launches his own attack, narrowly missing the professor. The professor is taken aback, questioning Woo-in's audacity to attack him. Woo-in coolly admits to trying to harm the professor, but purposely misses, as he cannot let the professor harm Ji-woo. In the riveting battle between Woo-in and the professor, Woo-in's powers prove to be no match for his opponent. Despite Woo-in's pleas to leave Ji-woo alone and explaining that he is innocent, the professor dismisses him quickly and continues his pursuit of Ji-woo. However, Caden arrives on the scene, furious with the professor's actions. Ji-woo wakes up and urges Caden to save himself, but Caden has a different plan in mind. Caden prepares to face the professor. As the professor approaches, he is taken aback when Caden transforms into his true majestic form. Confused, the professor questions Caden's identity. To the question, Caden uses his powers of space isolation. The professor recognizes these powers and realizes that this is the great Caden standing before him. The professor's demeanor instantly changes to one of fear and apprehension. He begins to apologize profusely, claiming that he didn't intend to harm Caden. However, Caden no longer cares about apologies. His sole focus is on finishing off the professor and putting an end to his reign. Caden launches a powerful attack against the professor, hoping to finally defeat him. Surprisingly, the professor manages to survive. Just as Caden is about to strike again, Woo-in steps forward, standing between Caden and the professor. He asks Caden to spare the professor, explaining that he didn't know about Caden and Ji-woo's relationship. Confused by Woo-in's sudden defense of the professor, Caden demands that Woo-in move aside. When Woo-in doesn't comply, Caden prepares for an attack that would harm them both. However, Ji-woo interrupts and pleads with Caden to let them go, as Woo-in is his friend and has helped him escape from the professor. Reluctantly, Caden agrees and allows the professor and Woo-in to leave. Caden carries Ji-woo back home, using his powers to hasten his healing process. Ji-woo is fascinated by Caden's true form, but unfortunately, Caden involuntarily transforms back into a cat. Meanwhile, Woo-in returns to the lab with the weakened professor. Realizing they need to escape soon, the professor instructs Woo-in to gather all the data. Suddenly, members of the Awakeners Union enter the lab, arresting the professor for conducting illegal research. Infuriated, the professor accuses Woo-in of betrayal, causing confusion for Woo-in. The agents from the Awakeners Union work diligently to conceal Caden's presence and look for a solution to address Ji-woo's newfound abilities. Meanwhile, Caden ponders the mystery of his involuntary transformation into a cat. He wonders if it wasn't merely a mere imitation, but a complete transformation. Realizing he may possess more powers than he initially thought, Caden believes that regaining his human form shouldn't be too difficult once he has fully recovered. Deciding to revisit the site of their battle, Caden plans to ensure that all traces of his presence have been erased. Ji-woo decides to tag along but receives an unexpected call. In-hyuk, another awakened one, reaches out to Ji-woo, revealing himself outside Ji-woo's house. In-hyuk shares that they have conducted research on Ji-woo, as it is crucial to be aware of all awakened ones in the area. Caden realizes that they have landed in the wrong neighborhood, possibly within Ji-young-yu's district. Ji-young-yu, a renowned awakened one with exceptional wind abilities. In-hyuk educates Ji-woo on the common rules followed by awakened ones, emphasizing the importance of concealing their powers from others for their own advantage. In-hyuk bids farewell, assuring Ji-woo that they will stay in touch. The purpose of their meeting was simply to introduce himself to Ji-woo. Curious as to why In-hyuk is helping him, Ji-woo learns that it is the duty of territory leaders to assist new awakened ones within their areas. This tradition has been upheld among awakened ones for a long time. Ji-woo gradually accepts his new reality as an awakened one. Meanwhile, in the Union headquarters, In-hyuk confirms that Ji-woo has no connection to Dr. Delane's case, the professor they encountered. It was merely a coincidence. In-hyuk also expresses concern for Ji-woo's well-being and asks Ji-young to protect him. Later, at school, the bullies find Ji-woo and notice his injured leg. Seizing the opportunity, they confront and corner him in the classroom. The bullies inquire about Woo-in and taunt Ji-woo, reminding him that there will be no one to save him now. Ji-woo manages to avoid a punch from one of the bullies, which only further infuriates them. They ruthlessly attack Ji-woo, targeting his already injured leg. The bullies also search for Woo-in, intending to harm him as well. However, when Ji-woo hears Woo-in's name, his instincts take over. He cannot allow them to harm Woo-in. Ji-woo fights back, overpowering the bullies and defending himself. The teacher enters the classroom, shocked to see Ji-woo successfully handling the chaos and the bullies. Recognizing the severity of Ji-woo's injuries, the teacher allows him to leave to have his leg checked out. Ji-woo notices Kaden watching him and feels a sense of pride in his retaliation. Kaden accompanies Ji-woo back home, and they discuss Ji-woo's past need to isolate himself to conceal his abilities. Now, with the knowledge of other awakened ones, Ji-woo realizes he no longer needs to live in isolation. At the headquarters, In-hyuk is in conversation with a boy from Ji-woo's school named Ji-suk. In-hyuk asks Ji-suk to keep an eye on Ji-woo. Though curious about Ji-woo's abilities, Ji-suk receives secretive responses from In-hyuk, who advises him to only follow given instructions. Ji-suk meets with the bullies, inquiring about who is responsible for their condition. Their answer infuriated him, especially since he had warned them to stay away from Ji-woo. Despite his anger, he's relieved that the bullies are all right, knowing they wouldn't stand a chance against an awakened one. Back at Ji-woo's home, Kaden decides to impart his knowledge and teach Ji-woo how to enhance his abilities. Kaden emphasizes the importance of improving Ji-woo's physical capabilities so that when combined with his super speed, he would become unstoppable. Ji-woo proves to be a quick learner, impressing Kaden with his progress. Meanwhile, Ji-woo grows increasingly concerned about Woo-in's repeated absence from school. In order to confirm that he left no traces behind during their fight, Kaden revisits the location where he battled the professor. He's pleased to see that there are no lingering signs of their encounter. Additionally, he notices Union workers clearing out the lab, inadvertently revealing himself, but his feline body saves him any trouble. Ji-woo unexpectedly runs into the bullies along with Ji-suk. Surprisingly, Ji-suk asks Ji-woo for a private conversation. Ji-woo and Ji-suk find a secluded spot to talk, where Ji-suk proposes that they engage in a fight. This proposal catches Ji-woo off guard, but Ji-suk explains that he has an image to maintain. Ji-woo can't beat his friends up and get away with it. Curious and confused, Ji-woo agrees, not fully understanding the situation. As they begin fighting, Ji-suk skillfully evades each of Ji-woo's blows. Eventually, Ji-suk reveals that he too is an awakened one. They must fight in order to determine their ranks as awakened ones. They continue to fight, but it becomes evident that Ji-woo is outmatched by Ji-suk's training and skills. However, once Ji-suk notices Ji-woo's injured leg, he decides to halt the fight. Ji-suk returns to the Union, where In-hyuk greets him with furious anger. In a heated discussion, In-hyuk reveals to Ji-suk that Ji-woo's situation is different from other awakened ones. Unlike Ji-suk, Ji-woo was not trained from birth, and his powers have been more of a curse than a gift. Ji-suk feels guilty for not realizing the extent of Ji-woo's struggles earlier. In-hyuk then raises the concern of what Ji-young, the chairwoman, would do if she found out about Ji-woo's situation. Ji-suk pleads with In-hyuk not to tell his sister, acknowledging how sensitive and authoritative she has become since assuming her position. Unbeknownst to Ji-suk, Ji-young has been standing behind him, listening to their entire conversation. She interrupts their discussion and invites her brother to spar with her. Meanwhile, back at home, Ji-woo's demeanor noticeably changes. Kaden deduces that Ji-woo was approached by an awakened one to determine their rank. Ji-woo feels disappointed in himself, Recalling his fight with Jisuk, Kaden reassures him, saying that it would have been strange if he had won the fight since he's not trained. Realizing Jiwoo's potential, Kaden offers to help him tap into his powers before his rematch with Jisuk. In-hyuk, concerned about Jiwoo's absence from school since his fight with Jisuk, discusses the matter with the chairwoman. He seeks permission to visit Jiwoo and offer his support. Jisuk plops down on a chair, feeling a bit sore after his intense spar with his sister. Meanwhile, his friends decide to amuse themselves by joking about how Jisuk may have landed Jiwoo in the hospital since he stopped showing up. Oh, the joys of speculation. At home, Kaden has been training Jiwoo relentlessly day and night. Jiwoo thinks he's made progress, but Kaden, being the tough cookie he is, remains unsatisfied and urges Jiwoo to toughen up and keep training. No rest for the awakened, I suppose. To Jiwoo's surprise, In-hyuk pays another visit to his house. In-hyuk apologizes for the trouble caused by Jisuk. In-hyuk showers him with apologies, mistaking the true source of his weariness, the fight with Jisuk, not the training. He explains that Jisuk has a mind of his own, but his dear sister recently taught him a lesson with some sibling punishment. In-hyuk assures Jiwoo that Jisuk won't bother him again. Feeling stronger, ready to take on the world, Jiwoo insists on fighting Jisuk one more time. In-hyuk, knowing Jisuk's power for someone his age, warns Jiwoo that this might not be the best idea. But our determined Jiwoo wants to test his strength and find out just how powerful he can be. Reluctantly, In-hyuk agrees to set up the fight, secretly feeling a pat of pride that Jiwoo is ready to embrace his awakened destiny. Ji-young is taken aback when she finds out that Jiwoo wants to challenge Jisuk, knowing that Jisuk is much more skilled. Reluctantly, Ji-young agrees after In-hyuk assures her that he will personally supervise and ensure Jiwoo doesn't sustain serious injuries. In-hyuk informs Jisuk that they will have a rematch in 5 days. Jisuk is initially shocked but soon lets his sinister side take over, deciding not to go easy on Jiwoo next time. Jiwoo has been training diligently, but Kaden remains dissatisfied. Despite Kaden pushing him relentlessly, Jiwoo hasn't complained once and finds joy in unleashing his powers. Jiwoo wholeheartedly thanks Kaden for giving him the chance to live without fear, which melts his heart, and he lets his admiration gleam, appreciating Jiwoo on his progress. Finally, the day of the fight arrives and In-hyuk arrives to escort Jiwoo. Jiwoo enters the Union's building, amazed by its grandeur, but even more taken aback by the sight of Ji-young, the young woman holding the position of chairwoman. Kaden, sensing the powerful energy emanating from her, confirms that she is indeed one of the strongest awakened individuals in Korea. Ji-young greets Jiwoo and expresses concern about his decision to fight Jisuk, emphasizing Jisuk's immense combat skills. Jiwoo responds by saying that while he would like to win, it's not the most important thing to him right now. He wants to prove to his past cowardly self how much he has improved. His impassioned words cause them to back off. Jisuk arrives slightly late for the fight and questions why Jiwoo hasn't been attending school, and sarcastically wonders if Jiwoo has been secretly training at home. The naive Jiwoo is surprised at how accurately Jisuk guesses his situation. Jiwoo and Jisuk take their positions. Before Jiwoo can react, Jisuk lands a series of punches, knocking Jiwoo to the ground. Just as Jisuk confidently starts walking away, Jiwoo rises from the ground, determined to continue the fight. He taps into his inner powers, gracefully evading all Jisuk's attacks and finally landing a powerful blow. Outraged, Jisuk unleashes all his powers, intent on defeating Jiwoo. In-hyuk and Kaden are impressed by Jiwoo's incredible adaptability. They never expected him to perform confidently and ruthlessly. However, the intensity of the fight escalates as Jisuk becomes more aggressive than ever, landing a dangerous blow on Jiwoo. In-hyuk and Kaden are on edge, worried that Jiwoo might suffer serious injuries. Jiwoo lies motionless on the ground, and Jisuk once again turns to walk away. In-hyuk scolds him, reminding him that he was supposed to take it easy on Jiwoo. But Jisuk dismisses In-hyuk's words, implying that he didn't think someone as busy as In-hyuk or his sister would take time out of their schedules to watch their fight and expect him to hold back. Just as those words leave Jisuk's mouth, he hears Jiwoo getting up once again, declaring that the fight is far from over. Jiwoo gets up once again, leaving everyone in the room confused. Jisuk starts to question if there's more to Jiwoo's powers. Could he possibly have defensive abilities in addition to his speed? Jisuk decides to increase the intensity of his attacks, but In-hyuk intervenes, recognizing that Jiwoo might be in danger of severe injury. Ji-woo insists on continuing the fight, but In-hyuk explains that Ji-suk hasn't even unleashed his powers to their full potential. Disappointed to learn this, Ji-woo still insists on fighting him. Ji-suk, amused, begins to channel his energy once again. In-hyuk tries to stop them, but Ji-young steps in, asking In-hyuk to let Ji-woo do as he pleases, as she sees his potential. Ji-woo and Ji-suk resume their fight, both as aggressive as ever. Ji-suk's condescending trash-talking starts to affect Ji-woo. Utilizing his wind-controlling abilities, Ji-suk lands his most powerful blow yet, leaving Ji-woo covered in blood on the ground. However, Ji-woo remains determined, ready to continue the fight until the very end, shocking everyone in the room. During the fight, Ji-woo's mind drifts back to a childhood memory, a moment when his powers were accidentally revealed while trying to save a helpless cat. He recalls the fear he felt back then, but now, he refuses to give in to fear ever again. Despite barely being able to stand, bleeding and feeling as if his body has been crushed, Ji-woo remains unwavering in his determination. Ji-suk, surprised by Ji-woo's resilience, decides to end the torment by delivering one final blow. However, in that crucial moment, Ji-woo remembers the strategy Kaden taught him and put it into action. Just as Ji-suk gathers his powers for the last attack, Ji-woo summons every ounce of strength he has left, landing a powerful punch that sends Ji-suk flying several feet away. Kaden approaches Ji-woo, full of praise for his performance. Ji-young intervenes, asking her brother to stop and acknowledging his valiant effort. With a sense of respect, she walks toward Ji-woo, now severely injured, expressing her admiration for his unwavering perseverance. Ji-woo, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction, expresses his gratitude to Ji-suk for the fight, to which Ji-suk can't help but smile. In-hyuk and Ji-young discuss the fight, expressing surprise at Ji-woo's extraordinary resilience despite his lack of experience. After 2 days of treatment, Ji-woo finally regained consciousness, finding Kaden right by his side. Despite losing the fight, Ji-woo doesn't feel frustrated like last time. Instead, he feels a newfound sense of peace, as if he has finally embraced his identity as an awakened one. Out of the blue, Ji-young asks Ji-woo if he has ever heard the name Kaden. The sudden question startles both Ji-woo and Kaden, leaving them wondering why she is asking about him. Ji-woo brushes off the question, claiming he has never heard that name before. Ji-young then inquires about the cat's name, and without thinking, Ji-woo blurts out, casein nitrate. In-hyuk adores both the name and the cat, but Ji-young remains skeptical. The union workers issue a warning to Woon, telling him to stay away from the neighborhood to avoid any consequences for Dr. Delane. Woon rushes out of school after learning that Ji-woo has been missing school and encounters the bullies once again. Ji-young tells In-hyuk that she asked Ji-woo about Kaden, as she noticed signs of electrical abilities in Ji-woo's attack. Upon hearing this, In-hyuk hastily leaves the room, informing the chairwoman that he will be back soon. He rushes to Ji-woo's room, causing Ji-woo and Kaden to panic, thinking their secret has been exposed. However, it turns out that In-hyuk has returned only to give casein nitrate, a variety of treats and toys that he had purchased for him. Ji-suk realizes that he has been neglecting his school friends and decides to go to school to meet them. But, to his surprise, he is met with an unusual sight. Earlier, the bullies had attempted to corner Woon, but he couldn't tolerate it anymore and started fighting back, asking them about Ji-woo's whereabouts and what they did to him. The bullies eventually disclose that Ji-suk has been gone since his fight with Ji-woo. At that very moment, Ji-suk returns, and Woon rushes towards him. Ji-suk and Woon engage in a fierce fight, unaware that both are awakened ones. Woon asks about Ji-woo's location and becomes enraged when he discovers that Ji-suk put him in the hospital. Their fight is interrupted by Park, a union committee worker who warns Woon about the consequences of his actions. However, Woon is consumed by anger. They prepare to fight again, but Park reminds Woon that he is being monitored by the committee. Nevertheless, Woon doesn't care anymore. Coincidentally, In-hyuk appears on the scene and questions Park about being in their area without permission. Park explains that no one can interfere with the committee's actions. Woon is determined to fight Ji-suk and proposes an arrangement. Ji-suk willingly agrees, and In-hyuk and Park discuss the matter before deciding that Woon and Ji-suk can fight at Ji-young's facilities.
Hey viewers, subscribe for more quality content.